Hey, what's up? Welcome back to Code Reviews. In this episode, we are going to continue our full stack auth repo. When we left off last time, we had installed an Angular frontend and it could run. We got it running on SSL, same as we did with the backend, so it's on HTTPS. But all it could do is just load what Angular came with. So it's just a demo app. Didn't do anything with our backend. Didn't really touch the code at all for the front end. So what I've been working on for the contents of this video, so we'll check out the new branch, is a true Angular app. So I refactored the Angular app. We'd still run it the same, bin run. And when it starts up, what you'll notice is we have a new app, and it says, hello, this is the Angular front end. We are running in the local environment, and our backend server status is not healthy. Very simple. We'll go through the code and show why the bolded stuff is significant. But what I wanted to show you first is, okay, so our back, and we will do spring bin local startup scripts build and run. So we have actually hooked up and created a full stack application that's integrated front end and back end. So the back end is running. Let's see what the front end shows. Ooh, our back end server status is up. So we're successfully communicating with our back end. The front end knows we built that API, the health check. The front end is now listening for that health check. It's pulling that information. If we kill the back end server, once again, not healthy. So let's look and see how we did this. If we go to the pull request, I actually changed a number of things. So there'll be a number of different sections we'll go through. The first is that I wanted to show, this is the top level makefile. So I'm always trying to make the repo as easy as possible. What I recommend when you're messing with this repo, have two terminals, one for the front end, one for the back end. Run them separately, use the bin scripts, look and see the logs. Now, if you really don't want to do that, I did add a make command, build and run local, which will run the back end in the background, and then the front end. It runs both apps through the same terminal. And it's really messy. You're not going to be able to see the logs. Both are starting. It's total chaos on the screen. And it's just kind of a mess. It does work. So you have that going for you. The status is up, everything loaded. And when you kill it, it should kill everything. Control C. But it's just use two terminals. One for the front end, one for the back end. Keep it clean. Keep it at the top level. Don't run anything in the background because it'll be a headache for you to kill and manage what's running. Stuff will be running you don't want it to be running. Just don't worry about it unless you really know what you're doing. And it's not your code, so you probably don't know what you're doing. But I did make that change to the makefile so that you can run everything from the top level directory through one terminal, even though I recommend not to. I updated the readmes, so the readmes have all the information that we need for the latest thing. Angular has its own makefile, so if you cd into the Angular front-end repo, you can run make, and that just runs the ng-serve on HTTPS. So I'm continuing to try and make the app as user-friendly as possible. So I updated the makefile. I updated the README in both the Spring and the Angular repo. The Angular.json, we'll get back to that. The app.component. All right, so I think we're ready. We can just hop right in. Let's look at the actual Angular code base that we put together. I actually started a side series just going through Angular. Angular's kind of crazy. The documentation sucks, and even the helper, the stuff you find online kind of sucks. I think Angular is powerful, and I like the way that it mirrors and mimics Spring, but you run into a lot of issues, and luckily I had done this before, so I had code to pull from. So this is a configuration file for Angular. And essentially what you see here, most of this is just syntax. I made things look better. But there's a sub object called configurations. And this is where you create environment like properties files. So in Spring we have application.properties local, application.properties development, application.properties prod. You have different properties file that load different properties. You do something similar in Angular where I have environment configs and you have the local environment and you have the prod environment. And these should be the exact same file. It'll actually warn you if they're not. But this is where you set things like in local, our backend is localhost 8443. This is the Spring we're running. But in prod, it would be something different. So we could have just, API URL and it'd be like an actual web address that we have online. But we have these environment variables. It gets set up. When you actually look at the HTML that we've set up, one of the things we had is we're running in the environment. And in Angular, this is how you inject variables into the HTML. So if you look at the app.component.ts, the environment is pulling from that environment variable. So it's saying, okay, it's local, it's pulling from local. But when you look at the angular.json, it's saying when you're in the configuration prod, which this is, you replace the local.ts file that it reads by default with the prod version. And so when you run ng-build, which actually compiles and minifies and optimizes your code, this is where it does that file replacement. And that's just one of the things I wanted to demo was how you kind of work with environments. So you have two different environment files, and then you can inject that, and they're kind of built differently. So there's not much here. Angular gave you a ton of crap in their HTML file that you saw with that first out-of-the-box app. I broke it down just into a few kind of features that I wanted to demo. So we have the title, which we're setting here. It's just hard-coded, and we inject that directly here. So whatever that title is, we can do it. So let's do make, so we are running. All right, so it says, hello, this is the Angular front end. That's just tied directly to this variable. So you can just make it whatever you want. You go back, and that also updates. Cool. This is the environment variable, so you're setting a variable in TypeScript equal to an actual configuration property, which is there. And then the backend status, health status, is an observable, which is what comes back from the API. And by default, we're saying it's not yet set, but when the application initializes, it's setting it equal to the value of get backend health, which is just a GET request. So you have http.get, you have the localhost 8443, you add in the health, you don't have any other params besides that, and you just return the response.status. Yep, so what we show in this controller is just an object status with up. And that's all we're parsing through here, which is we get this response, take the response.status, it maps that JSON string to an object, it takes status and it returns it. And we set up that observable, and then in the actual app.component, when you unpack an observable, you use this async pipe. It's kind of advanced stuff, but it works. It's just meant to work and be an example for you. I go into it separately in other videos that I'll make. But yeah, that was me kind of taking apart this top level component and going from this really crazy stuff to show you this is how you inject a variable, this is how you inject a variable that reads from a configuration file, and then this is how you connect to a backend API and you unpack the data that's coming through. So that one's viewed. Like I said, the app.component I just kind of expanded it a little bit, added the environment, and I also added the API. App.config, I got rid of this. I really didn't know what they needed it for. Again, I couldn't really tell. It was different than what I'd used. They have app.modules, which is just a way to wire up the Angular application. So we declare this app.component, which is our top level component over here, so that it's available. You need this browser module to actually load everything, and to load Angular and to bootstrap the app. You need this router outlet, because router outlet, this is where we put what I was demoing in the app.component. And then we need the HTTP client module imported, so that in our service where we get the API, we can use that http.get request. And then we bootstrap everything in the app component. It's kind of this is dependency injection also, kind of a big topic, but this is what you need to get it running. I got rid of app.routes. I created a placeholder module. So in Angular, you have kind of these sub directories of code, and they're all tied together with modules. So you package things together in modules, and then you use those as building blocks going up. This is just a placeholder. It's at the same level as the service. So I needed that HTTP here injected so I could use the GET request. But actually I have this line that says provided in root, which means this is automatically added at the app.module layer. I don't have to explicitly write it, but provided in root means it's here so that it's available in my app.component, and it will be injected when I call it out here. Again, kind of complicated stuff, but what matters is the code should work for you, and you can just play around with it. This is that core service that hooks up to the back end. These are the environment variables that we have set up, local and prod, that we talked about in the angular.json that we remove. I just played around with the index.html. It's really just a placeholder. You don't do much with it. And then obviously my formatter made some changes. The main.ts. So Angular comes with like a standalone oversimplified app that you would never run in production like that. I'm trying to make code that you can run in production the way you're running it on localhost, so practice like you play. So we actually use platform browser bootstrap module, and that's where we load that app.module we just walked through. And this is where we bootstrap the entire application. And now we're back to make files and readmes. So this was actually moved, so I updated that and moved it to the top level. I updated the readme. I renamed the info.md to just a readme. And then this is one small thing that I had to make on the Spring side. So we have our application loaded. If I hadn't made this change and we rebuild the app, the backend Spring app, you run into a cross origin error. So even though the server is running, we'll go to the app and it'll still say not healthy. When you look at why it's not healthy, it says act like localhost 843 health from origin, localhost 4200 has been blocked by CORS policy. There's a number of ways you can modify this, but the simplest way was to just add cross origin, which just explicitly allows anything to access this API. That was the easiest thing to do for now. In later episodes, we'll actually mess with Spring's configuration to allow specifically just this local host origin. So if you go back, it's up. And this is one of the reasons I like mono repos. So my last video is about mono repos, and the reason I like them is because I have one PR that requires for the front end to work end to end. I need to make a change on the back end. But if they're in two repos, I have to do all the review on the front end, merge it. But if I don't make the change on the back end, or I'm not even aware, it won't actually work. But this way, all the code that's changed, that needs to be changed, is changed in one PR, and I can review it. So I kind of covered a lot there. Angular, you just kind of use it, get something that works, and build out from there. That's been my experience. I'm trying to give you this. I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you in the next one.